Hello, bonjour. So in 2015, I won a public competition set by Brussels Mobility, which is part of the metro company in Brussels, and the STM, so the Société de Transport de Montréal, which is a public metro company in Montreal, or transportation station, to create a permanent artwork in the metro station Place d'Armes in Montreal. I proposed to make 14 glass panels with a Belgian glass, stained glass studio, and I won the final of the competition after 1 month of a project building, designing, which was made in collaboration with several different partners, and especially the glass studio Debongnie in Belgium. So I will present the sources, or what I call the sources of the project, the title, the original proposals, the methods, the materials that I used, the prototypes, and the final result, which is called Soleil de minuit. So in all my works, I use spectrophotometry and colorimetry. These are methods to characterize the visual appearance of colored materials. So spectral analysis allows me to capture and represent the interactions between light and matter with digital data. I usually worked in the past a lot with pigments. Now I worked with glass. I also create my own light sources. And I always try to use the best, the most amazingly chromatic and durable materials that are available in any kind of field that I get in touch with. And all these materials are characterized by scientific methods. So to design my artworks, I use elements of physics, mathematics, and color science. And I also use laboratory instruments, and I code my own softwares in the Python programming language. This is actually it's called the Zen of Python. It's the creator of the language put that within the language. So you start Python and you type import this, enter, and this appears. I worked also a lot with an inkjet printer. I have my own pigment printer, and I calibrate it, and I create my own methods to map the color space of this printer and to use it to create artworks. And this is so with these softwares and color methods, or light and color methods, I create algorithms that, or sometimes, let's say, I created algorithms that represent the visual appearance of some optical phenomena. And the picture that you will see in the metro station in Montreal comes from a study from 2015. On the left, it's the photographic reproduction of a print that is from 2015. And it represents a circular-shaped light source, for example, the sun, seen through a lens out of focus. And so, you see, this is a simulation that I found on the internet, and this is my work. So the same, this is the phenomenon that this algorithm was written to reproduce with a very high visual accuracy. So this first part were sources about my own artistic practice. Other sources of the work that has been installed in Montreal are natural phenomena. I was searching for, in the metro station, there were 14 concrete windows shapes that could be replaced. It was one of the places where an artwork could be made. So I was searching for some kind of picture that I could use to at the same time use my methods, use glass, and work with light. And I stumbled upon these pictures of the midnight sun on the internet. I was searching for sun-related expressions. And this became a very clear inspiration source for the work, even though I completely forgot after, and I just remembered when I wrote the catalogue. And so another element, another natural element, let's say, even though it's transformed by atmospheric pollution, is the natural light of the sun that I can measure with my instruments. I actually measured the light in Brussels and somehow transported it in Montreal. And another element which is also natural is the time difference between the two cities. So there is a time difference of about 6 hours between the two cities. That means that when the sun rises in Brussels, it's about midnight in Montreal. So that gave the idea of the title, which is Soleil de minuit, the sun of midnight, which is also the name of that phenomenon, that other phenomenon. So these two things kind of. Another source was the stained glass. I have always been fascinated by stained glass. I'm French. When I was a kid, I was going to the churches, the cathedral with my parents. In my parents' home, there's actually 3 quite big stained glass in a room. And so it was kind of something that I always wanted to experiment with. And I never thought that it could happen to me at that moment, but because I had the opportunity to propose a work with quite a big budget, I thought, okay, I'm gonna propose to make a stained glass. And I didn't know much about, I didn't know almost anything about this media. I met the Debongnie. It's a glass master that actually they have their studio not very far. It's about 40 minutes by train from where I live. And I met several different glass studios actually, but I decided to work with them because they were very open to discussions. They were very nice, and they became real colleagues. Now we developed other projects. We're still working on some projects right now, actually. And one of the first things I wanted to do is, I actually realized when I went to see their studio that I didn't really know the exact color range of what's available in the glass. And also I never realized that some colors in the glass, especially the selenium red, orange, and yellow, and also to some extent the cobalt blue, are really extremely colorful. I have some really extremely colorful pigments at home, but this was even more colorful. And so the first thing I wanted to do was to check if I could capture some data about these materials. So I built some kind of device with a lamp and with my spectrophotometer, some code, and I was able to scan. So I thought, okay, I can work with the same methods as I was used to work with for like maybe a year. But with glass. And so with the Debongnie and other companies, within a month, I developed the proposal for the metro station. So it's 14 glass panels It's a laminated or epoxy-laminated antique glass on float glass, backlit with LED, double glazed, fabricated in Belgium, transported to Montreal. And that's what the sketch looked like in 2015 before we start working on it seriously. On June 21st, 2015, in my attic, I made light measurements of the sun and the changing color of the sun over time. And I used I divided the set of measurements in 14 steps, and I used these prints of the lights, if you want, to design the works. So we won, so it was really nice, and so then the problems started to... So we made... Actually, we had much more problems than what I'm going to talk about today. So we made a few prototypes. It was July. It was just to check if it looks good. I wanted to see, I didn't know how it looks like, to laminate glass with epoxy resins. This was also very small. This was the second series of two prototypes where I wanted to compare two competing algorithmic approaches to the creation of this picture. So the top one has a maximum of contrast, the bottom one has a maximum of colorfulness or chroma. The bottom one won for completely subjective reasons, but clearly it was better. And on the right side you have a map. It's the first version of the map I was creating for them to build, so it's a one-to-one scale map that was printed, and they were mounting the pieces on this map that I was printing. That map didn't have any in-between space between the pieces of glass, which was a very bad idea, because then the glass, everything is cut by hand, so they are never completely perfectly cut. So a third prototype was there to determine what should be the tolerance margin between the step of the grid, if you want. And also I wanted to check if it was better with black lines that hide the hand-cut element, and finally it was not better. In August that's when the real color work started. Because before that I was just working with the glass that was available in the Belgian studio, but the idea was to go to Germany, in one of the two only remaining factories that produce mouthblown antique glass in Europe. I don't know if there are any other factories in the world that make this kind of glass. So I went there. This is just a picture of what they are. They are working every day from 4 a.m. to 10 a.m. These are what I call crazy German people. And it's actually for temperature reasons. In the summer it can be bad, so the temperature is much more stable during the night. But yeah, so the compromise is the very early morning, I guess. And so in this factory they have an office with like thousands and thousands of glass samples. They actually have collections for America, Europe, Japan, and maybe others, I don't remember. And they have a standard catalog, so with my spectrophotometer, I measured the entire spectral catalog plus a selection of about 100 shades of red, orange, and yellow that are called non-standard. So these are glasses that are made only once, or sometimes have failed. I also measured pinks, sorry. Pink is the most expensive color. It's made by melting gold in the glass. And they had some crazy pink, like pink on red is really expensive pieces of glass that can be up to 15 millimeters thick. So I measured these things, and I came home with all of that, really not knowing exactly what to do with it, because the big question was like, how many colors should I use? If I was used to well, the algorithm that I adapted from like digital print works was just picking up thousands, or in a database of thousands of colors, and usually ending up making a picture with between 2 to 5 or 800 different colors. It was impossible to let the algorithm do this with the glass database, otherwise we would have had to buy the whole factory, which is not possible. Another element was the light design. I worked with a Canadian company. We made some simulations of the way the light is diffused or reverberated within these concrete boxes. And we made a real live test, which was, I mean, I was not, the simulation only told us this was kind of uniform, but I had no idea what it would look like, so I wanted to make a real life test as well. So we did that in Belgium. That's one day in the studio. There was almost everybody that worked on the project in Europe was there. And so I designed an algorithm. It's a generative algorithm that was picking up in the database the glass colors to create this picture. And it was pushing the colorfulness of the object and the lightness of the object that was to be represented, this kind of light spot. Daylight with a chromatic aberration on a gray background. It was pushing the lightness at the maximum, so I kind of explored the color space of the glass and arrived to the very edge of the most colorful thing that you can get with this material. And the algorithm gave 14 pictures, and for each picture a list of tiles, of pixels, if you want, that became the glass order that we made as well. And one-to-one scale maps that had to be printed to fabricate the panels. And so we ended up, or I ended up, tuning my algorithm. Not too many colors, but not too few. It was very hard to tell what's the limits where it would be too few colors. And so we ended up with 84 colors. So these are pictures of the fabrication. I don't really have time to go into much detail. So I'm just gonna show you a film about, and after I'm almost done. So this is a film that we made in the studio. And it's all fake, because I actually did the measurements before. That day I didn't sleep, so I look really weird. But there's even a mistake, because the guy who was making the video doesn't know about light spectrum. So I measure blue glass, but then the red spectrum shows up or something like that. But well, it will show you very well how they worked on the fabrication of this. And this was a very big challenge for them, because the panels are very big. It's, if I'm not wrong, it's 165 by 2 meters and 7 centimeters in one piece. So every panel is 210 kilo. And so when we exported that, we had a container full of glass and steel. And this is the material. This is antique glass. It's really beautiful stuff. And the music is Philip Glass. And so some glass have bubbles, some glass flashed, some, wow. And so this is how it works. First, references are cut 4 by 4 centimeters by hand, and I give them a map. They assemble all the pieces on the map. Before that, all the pieces have been cleaned with acetone, put in plastic boxes, and all the irregularity of the glass sheets have been randomized by the process of cleaning them. So normally, well, the irregularities of the glass are well spread on the pictures. And this is what they invented. This was very difficult to make. It's actually a casting of epoxy resin between flowed glass, which is laminated, and these tiles of antique glass, which are fixed by an adhesive paper on the other side on a turning table. So they put the epoxy and then they put the table horizontal again, and it will polymerize for 4 or 5 days. And then you can open the thing, clean it, and the first step is done. There are a few air bubbles, but really not much. And so the name of the glass studio is going to appear. That's my website. Well, that's my blog actually. That's the website of the glass studio. This is the music. Yeah, this is the photo. Just show the pictures in the metro. What? And just show the views in the metro.
Okay, yes.
Yeah. So it just show you the. Well, I made an exhibition in Brussels about the project. This is some pictures of the inauguration in Montreal in May. So this is the metro station. These are 2 views of the work installed. And there's a catalogue as well. And I have some of the catalogue if you are interested. And I don't have name cards because I never had them. But if you want to contact me, take a picture of that. Thank you.
Thank you.